In this video, I'm going to answer the question, what is a natal chart? And to help you better understand your natal chart. Now, my goal is that by the end of this video, you'll be able to locate different planets in your chart, the signs that they're in, the houses that they're in, and most importantly, give you some information so you can follow along with my social media videos. For example, sometimes I will say things like, Mars is in Gemini. Where is that transiting in your chart? What house does it fall in? Or there's a solar eclipse coming up in April 2023, and it's at 29 degrees of Aries. What house does that fall in your chart? Because that's the area of life that will be affected for you. Can you do that now? If the answer is no, then you're going to want to watch this video. So in this video, I answer the question, what is a natal chart? And I hope to help you better understand your natal astrology chart and what all these symbols mean. Now, the birth chart, we can draw this up using the day, time, and place of your birth. I will talk about natal astrology versus predictive astrology and what it means when an astrologer says natal chart versus when we talk about transits. We'll go through all the zodiac signs, planets, and their symbols. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these in depth and what they mean. That will be the subject for a later video, but I would like to give you an overall, but I would at least like you to know what each symbol means. Now, you're going to want to get on my Patreon page and download the keywords PDF. So if you go to my page and in the search box, type in the keyword, so actually type in keyword and that PDF should come up and you can download it. It has keywords for all of the planets, the signs, and the houses. So as we're going through this, by the end of the video, you should be able to identify what sign Venus is in your chart. And let's say Venus is in the sign of Gemini. You'll look at your little handout, so I'd either print it out or download it to your phone. And you can look at your handout and say, okay, here's Venus. There's keywords for Venus. Venus is how we relate to other people. She represents love and our one-to-one relationships, friendships, best friends, how we deal with money, what we like. And if Venus is in the sign of Gemini, Gemini is variety, intellect, communication, curiosity, talking. And so what do you like? You like variety. What kind of friends do you like? What kind of partner do you like? Somebody you can talk to and interact with. So you'll at least be able to get a start in interpreting your chart. And we'll talk about how to find the 12 houses of the chart and rulership in depth. That is more of an intermediate topic, so for intermediate astrology, but you should at least know the ruler of each one of your houses if you want to better understand transits and predictions and what astrologers are talking about when we say that solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, where does that fall in your chart? What house does it fall in? I want you to be able to answer that, and by the end of this video, you will be. So what is a natal chart? People will also say my chart or my astrology chart. Your astrology chart is just a snapshot of the planetary positions on the day and time that you were born. So where were the planets in the sky? What sign were they in? Like what zodiac sign? Were two planets next to each other? Were they opposite? The location in the world that the location you were born, we use that too in order to draw up your chart. So to have your natal chart produced, you need these three things: month, the day, and the year. Those are required. We have to have those three pieces of information. Now, time of birth, accurate time of birth is important in the city, but those are optional. You don't have to have them. And if you don't have the time of birth, the city, that won't matter. Now, if you don't have a birth time, and there are a lot of people that can't find that, then you can draw up a chart for 12 p.m. That's the halfway point of the day. and we would use a sunrise chart. I can go into detail on that in another video, but if you're looking up your chart online, I would just type in 12 p.m. and use that for now. Now, to find an accurate birth time, your first go-to is going to be the birth certificate. You're going to want to look there. If you don't have a birth certificate, try to find some other sort of birth record. Maybe one of your parents has a photo album with baby photos and a birth announcement. If that's not available, you can ask one of your parents what they remember, or maybe grandparent or aunt and uncle or somebody else that was present at the birth. But mom and or dad's memory is not always as good as we would like to think. Sometimes it's pretty right on and sometimes it's off. And I'm going to give you an example. One of my clients asked her mom what time she was born. Her mom said about 9 a.m. And then later on, she found her birth certificate and it said she was born around 5:30 p.m. So unfortunately, mom was very off. And if you have a lot of siblings, sometimes parents can mix up, what time which sibling was born. Even nurses don't always get the time, super accurate because everyone's concerned about baby. Is baby healthy? Is baby safe? And so time seems to be, kind of down on the list as far as importance. And when I say sunrise chart, when you're typing in the information into, let's say you're using a website to find your chart, and I'm going to show you how to do that. By the way, I'm going to go through an example with you. We'll go to astro.com and I'll show you how to do it. But if there is an option that says, no birth time, use sunrise chart, you can check that if that's an option. I have an app on my phone that I use to draw up charts too, and it's an option on there. Now, this is natal chart for Emily. Emily was born October 21st, 1997 at 6:57 a.m. in New York City. Now, if you go along the, look in the middle of the wheel, all of the larger symbols are planets, asteroids, luminaries, and calculated points. So the planets are Mercury, Venus, Mars. You can, Venus and Mars are probably symbols you've seen a lot, so you can probably locate those in Emily's chart. They are to the bottom and off to the left. The luminaries are the sun and the moon. And for ease, sometimes I refer to the luminaries as planets, just to make it a little easier. Calculated points aren't asteroids or planets at all. Calculated points are exactly that. They're points in space that we have calculated. So for example, the nodes in the chart, those are calculated points. They look like horseshoes. And I will be doing a teaching video on evolutionary astrology, and I tell you how we calculate those and why and what the purpose is. Part of fortune is another one. I don't have it here on Emily's chart, but that's another one that people will commonly see in charts. Now notice the planets have symbols next to them. They're a little bit smaller, and those are the zodiac signs. So look in Emily's chart and find the sun. It is a yellow circle, it has a dot in the middle, and you know what zodiac sign is next to the sun, what sign her sun is in. The sun is in the middle of the chart, it's off to the left. Her sun is at 28 degrees of Libra, and that's the 28 there with the little circle, it's 28 degrees. So what about Emily's moon? The moon symbol looks just like a moon. It's at the top of the chart, off to the right, and Emily's moon is in Cancer. Now there's lots of moving parts here, and if you try to digest it all at once, you're probably going to get frustrated. So the best thing to do is just focus on one thing at a time. So I'm hoping through my website to have, when scheduling one of my services, where you could add on a copy of your astrology chart for a small fee. But honestly, you can look this up online for free. There's really no need for you to pay to have a copy of your chart unless it's, like a fancy print. So now I would like to show you the steps on how to do that, because I will tell people to go to astro.com. When they comment on my social media post, I'll tell them go to astro.com. You can pull up your chart there. And sometimes they get on there and get a little bit lost. And that's understandable because there's a lot going on that website and there's a lot of options. So let me walk you through it really quick. So let's go to astro.com and I can show you how to look up your natal astrology chart. Now over here on the right is the search bar. You can search up celebrity charts, public figures. This is for the purpose of research. A lot of astrologers will use that for research, myself included. Now over here in the left in the top, we see the 3 lines there. We're going to click on that. Now here we have free horoscopes. Click on free horoscopes and there's a few options there. Now all horoscopes at a glance, you're going to want to click on that. And then down here it says chart drawing, ascendant. There's extended chart selection. You could do that. But let's just go to chart drawing ascendant. Now here I've already drawn up a chart for Emily. Now I'll show you how I did that. So first, let's type in Emily's name. Okay, and last name is optional. You can also go to My Astro and create a login, so that way every time you don't have to keep re-entering your birth data, and they have horoscopes, they have all kinds of things here on astro.com. Emily identifies as female, so I'm going to click on that. Her birthday is 21st of October. She was born at 6:57 a.m. Her birth city was New York, New York. So here's Emily's chart, and you'll notice that this chart looks a little different from the style of chart that I showed you. And that's because this is a free chart. It's a little less fancy, but there's really a lot of great information here. Now, I use Solar Fire to draw my charts. It's a Solar Fire program. It might be a couple $100s. They're pretty expensive. You really don't need that for beginning astrology, so don't feel like you have to spend that kind of money right now. You don't. But here in Emily's chart, remember Emily had the sun in Libra. The sun was over here on the left side at 28 degrees. Now you'll notice that the zodiac signs are not being printed in the middle here. You can see Libra on the outer part of the wheel. We're going to talk about this outer part, the zodiac signs, here in just a little bit. But the sun falls in right at the end of Libra. You can see the moon at the top of the chart. The moon falls in the sign Cancer. And if it's still unclear what sign your planets are in using this, you can go over to this box on the left, and it has all of the planets and the luminaries listed. So we have the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. And you can see the sun is at 28 degrees, LIB is Libra. The moon is at 7 degrees, CAN, which is Cancer. We have Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius, Aries, and so on. Now this box here is an element mode box. We're going to have some videos where we really break down the chart by element and by mode, and you don't have to worry about that just for now. But here we have F is for fire. These right here are the elements: fire, air, earth, and water. Across the top, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And that makes up the 12 different signs. Each sign has an element, and each sign has a mode. And at the bottom is an aspect grid. So this just tells you where two planets next to each other, which is a conjunction, where they trine, which is 120 degrees. It's a triangle. A little bit of geometry here, but not so much that it should scare you off. And we'll have plenty of videos where, we'll learn all about those things, but that's just a little bit about what's going on here. And of course, in the top left-hand side is Emily's information. So every time you draw up a chart on astro.com, you're going to want to double check the information that you entered, make sure it's right. So now that you know how to look up your chart, let's talk about all of these symbols. The zodiac signs. There's 12 different zodiac signs. And as you're looking in your chart and you see a symbol, you're wondering what it is, then you can look at your keyword handout. It'll tell you what the symbol means and also what it stands for. And as you go around the wheel of the chart, counterclockwise, the signs will always be in this order. So look at the very outermost part of Emily's chart and locate Aries. And you'll see as we go counterclockwise, we go from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer. And that's the order that the signs are in as the sun goes through the zodiac. The sun changes sign every single month. So as the sun goes from March to April to May, it's moving from Aries to Taurus to Gemini. Now, often in my social media posts, I will say something like, do you have any natal placements in the sign of Pisces or Gemini or Virgo? And when I say natal placement, I'm referring to the planets, the luminaries, maybe even a common asteroid or one of the main angles. And angles isn't something that I've mentioned yet, so that might be a new term for you. But the main planets are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Eris. She's another little dwarf planet along with Pluto, and she's on the other side of Pluto. Chirons and asteroids, sometimes I'll throw that in there. A lot of people know about Chiron, a lot of information about that. And then we have the ascendant, okay? And when I said angles, the ascendant is one of the angles. I usually use the symbol AS or ASC. Sometimes people will call the ascendant the rising sign. They mean the same thing. The midheaven, I use the symbol MC. On the next couple of slides, I'll show you how to find what zodiac sign those are in your chart. So the houses, the wheel is divided into 12 houses. These are the 12 different areas of activity for our lives, and each planet will fall into one of these 12 houses. And sometimes they are close to the same size, and sometimes they can be very different sizes. Now, if you look in the innermost part of the wheel, you'll see those boxes are numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4. Every chart has 12 houses. The third house is how you communicate with others. The fourth house is how you interact with family. The sixth house is how you need to work in order to be efficient, and so on. And you can find house keywords on your PDF. Now, there's many different ways to calculate these houses and find what size they should be, and those are called the different house systems. There are many, and astrologers cannot agree on which one is quote unquote best, and I don't believe any one is best or necessarily better than the other. I've used the same house system for a long time. It's always worked for me, so I stick to it. Don't worry about that too much for now. That's more of an advanced topic. But I just want you to know that since different astrologers or even websites use different house systems, the charts that they draw may look a little bit different. So if you pull up your chart on astro.com and then I print out your chart for you, the houses could look just a little bit different. That's why. Now your planets and the signs those planets are in, your rising sign, your midheaven, they should always be in the same sign and same degree most of the time, unless an astrologer is using maybe an equal house or whole house system where each house is the same size. Again, don't worry about that too much for now, but that is why sometimes the charts can look a little bit different. I don't want you to necessarily think that a chart was drawn up wrong. So why are we drawing an astrology chart this way? So first, let's picture the Earth in the center of this wheel. And let's say you're standing on top, you're in New York City, the day and time Emily was born, and you're looking up at the sky. What would you see? You would see the moon right above your head. And if you looked off to the east, you can see that the sun was rising. And that's what this wheel represents. And it was almost 7 a.m., so we would expect that the sun was about to rise. And that means that, you know, for Emily being born at sunrise and the sun being in her first house, that means that she has the sunrise effect on other people. So just as the sun rises and warms up the earth and it wakes us up in the morning, that's what Emily's presence is like. She wakes other people up and, you know, people notice her. She has charisma. Now that really dark line through the center of the chart that's going horizontally, that is the horizon. So off to the left, that is the east where the sun rises, and then off to the right, that's where the sun sets. And so anything to the top of the chart, that's what would be over your head. So we see the moon up there, so you would have seen the moon over your head that morning if, you know, the skies were clear. And all of that activity down at the bottom of the chart, that would be the other side of the earth. So now rulership. So let's look, the ruler of a house, we need to look to the beginning of the house and what sign is there. That is house rulership. So let's start with an example. Now here in this chart, you'll notice I've moved the numbers. So before we were looking at a chart where the numbers were in the inner part of the wheel, and now they're toward the outside, but they're still there, houses 1 through 12. And you'll notice that different astrologers, like in the program that I have, I use Solar Fire, and it's a more advanced, you know, astrology program. I can do a lot with it. I can change up the style. I get bored sometimes, got to change the style. Make it a little fun. But look at the first house. Okay, and what sign is at the beginning of that house? Okay, we see the number 23, that's 23 degrees, and the sign that's there is Libra. Notice all of the zodiac signs are on the outside of the wheel, and the zodiac signs, their section of the sky will always be the same size, unlike the houses. And the zodiac signs aren't going to line up with the houses exactly for most house systems. In the beginning of the first house, that is the ascendant or rising sign. So we can say that Emily has her big 3. You can name those now. She has Sun in Libra, Moon in Cancer, and Libra rising. So Libra is her first house ruler. So how do we know which side of the house is the beginning and which side is the end? Well, we're going to move through the chart counterclockwise, and I'm sure you noticed that the houses are labeled in a counterclockwise way. So let's find Emily's second house. And what sign is at the beginning of her second house? So we're moving counterclockwise. So from the first house down to the second, we see there's a 22, that's 22 degrees. We move to the outside of the wheel, and what sign is there? It's Scorpio. And so we would say Scorpio rules Emily's second house. We can do this for every house in the chart. Every house has a ruler, and this is what's going to make it easier for you to follow along with astrologers as we're giving you daily, weekly, and monthly updates. So when I say Mars is in Gemini, what house does that fall in your chart? You're going to be able to do that. So let's do that for Emily's chart, just for practice. Let's find where Gemini is. Because if Mars today in the sky is in Gemini, then we'll know what house it's transiting for Emily. So I'll give you a second. Look around the outside of the wheel and find Gemini. Remember, Gemini's the twins, and the symbol for Gemini is 2 lines. Then we have a line on the top and the bottom. Those 2 lines, they represent the twins or duality. Gemini's right there. Now, note that Gemini here in Emily's chart may be in a completely different position than where Gemini is in your chart. And here Gemini kind of straddles the 8th and 9th house, and in your chart, Gemini might be in the 1st and 2nd house. In my chart, Gemini is in the 5th and 6th. Now, if they're really, really tiny, but you might notice in the outside of the wheel, there's these little tick marks. What do those mean? Well, let's bring that out a little bit so we can see. Now, remember the beginning is going to be over here because we're always moving counterclockwise. So this first edge right here of Gemini, that's 0 degrees of Gemini, and we go into that first tick mark. So we're going here, we're going right to left, okay? And that first tick mark is 1 degree of Gemini. And the next represents 2 degrees. And so total, there's 30 sections here. And at the end of Gemini, 30 degrees of Gemini is actually 0 degrees of Cancer. And then we start all over again, 0 through 30. But you'll notice at the beginning of Emily's 9th house, that's 21 degrees of Gemini. So that'll be the 21st tick mark there. That's the beginning of her 9th house. That's her 9th house ruler. So if I say Mars is getting ready to go retrograde from 25 degrees of Gemini back to 10 degrees, we can see now that Mars had and this was at the end of 2022, Mars did a retrograde from Emily's 9th house back to the 8th and then forward again. So if you hear someone say, my astrology chart or my natal chart, they're referring to where the planets were in the day, time, and location of their birth. So if I'm doing a daily social media video and I say Mercury is now retrograde 16 degrees of Sagittarius, or there's an eclipse at 2 degrees of Scorpio, which is what we had in fall of 2022, I'm referring to where the planets are today. And you can compare the planets where they are today to where they were when you were born. So that's what we call a natal chart. Planets were when you were born. Transits is where they are today. That's predictive astrology. That's how we make predictions. And astrologers can make predictions of spiritual development with 100% accuracy using your chart. Now, as far as predicting events, that percentage goes down. That's harder to do because we have free will. But we can do spiritual development predictions very, very well. And there's different ways that we can show that. So here on the left side, there's Emily's chart again. It's called a uniwheel, one wheel with planets. And we can create a biwheel, and you'll see that on the right. We take Emily's chart and we put it in the inner wheel. So you'll notice in the inner part of the biwheel, meaning 2 wheels, you'll see those planets are in the same position as they are in the chart on the left. Now in the outer part of that biwheel, that's where the planets are today. It's called transits, and they tell me about your current spiritual development. I can move them and go out into the future 6 months, which is what I usually do in my 1-hour readings for clients. But I can go out a year from now or 5 years from now and make those predictions. And we can display bi-wheels in different ways. Here I just put the planets in an extra wheel on the outside, or I can display it like this. That's why I love Solar Fire. It gives me lots of options. And here we have Emily's chart, and then I just kind of tacked on the transits onto the outside. And here, if you look on the outside of the wheel and you locate Mars, where Mars is today. So the inner wheel is where Mars was when Emily was born, and her Mars at the bottom off to the left was at 16 degrees of Sagittarius. But if we go to the outside and look for Mars, we'll see Mars at the top of the chart off to the right at 15 degrees of Gemini. And the 15 is red because Mars was retrograde at the time. And if you're not sure what retrograde is, that's okay. That's subject for another video. That's what makes teaching astrology so fun. Is, again, there's so much going on. But Mars was retrograde at 15 degrees of Gemini, and it was going through Emily's 8th house.
So in this video, my goal was to answer what is a natal chart, to help you find a copy of your own natal chart, and to be able to have a little bit more information to follow along with my social media post. So now I have a little homework for you. It is March 2023, and Saturn is getting ready to go into Pisces. And Pluto very soon is going to be going into the sign of Aquarius. So I want you to look in your chart and find where the houses that Pisces fall in and the houses of Aquarius. In one of my podcasts, I did the forecast for 2023, and we talked about Pluto and Aquarius in depth and what that would mean. And now that you know what house that falls in for you, you know what area of life that's affecting. Feel free to make any comments on this video. Was this helpful? Which part was the most helpful? And also, if there are still any unanswered questions about how to find your natal astrology chart and how to follow along with the social media and any talk about transits, please let me know.